Lyrics? How the f do you write lyrics? Let's have a think about this and see what we can come up with. A common theme on my YouTube channel comments since I've started doing this is, where do the ideas from lyrics come from? Can you help me with lyrics? There's a couple of comments here. For me personally, I got a guitar for my 13th birthday, and as soon as I learned 3 chords, I wrote my first song. It was a rubbish song, but that's okay. So for me, being a musician has always been about creating my own music, and the guitar has always been a tool to help me with songwriting. So I'm always on the lookout for tips and advice from successful songwriters. Probably one of my most formative experiences was when I was very young. I saw an interview with Paul McCartney, definitely one of the greatest songwriters of all time. He was asked the question, have you got any advice for young songwriters starting out? And his answer was very, very interesting. He said, don't be afraid to write a bad song. Now, I've thought about this answer my whole life, and it has inspired me to be a better songwriter. I have always found it a very useful way to think about songwriting, because very often I bump into my musician friends and I ask them, are they writing any songs at the moment? And they say, yep, I'm still working on that song. And I go, that song from 2 years ago? And they go, yeah. And I go, finish it. And they say, but it's not right yet. Now, the trouble with that is while you're still stuck writing that epic song, you can't write any more songs, because that song is taking up real estate in your brain, and that will ultimately lead to getting writer's block. I think the best way to look at it is that don't think of writing songs as an art form. Now, don't get me wrong. As a listener, I can hear the art of songwriting, and I can definitely appreciate that it is an art form. Some of the greatest works of art I've ever heard are songs. But as creators, I don't think we should think about it on those terms. I think we should see songwriting as a craft. A craft is something that you can learn. A craft is something that you get better at with practice. So the more songs we write, the more we improve at writing songs. It's also very important to not be precious about your songs. Don't be thinking, oh, this is my art form. Every word of this is exactly how it should be, and you can't change a word. There's a special way of being self-critical when you're a songwriter. As I said, it's important to not be afraid to write a bad song, but writing a bad song can give us 2 opportunities. One, work out why the song is bad and try and improve it. And the other is just doing all the things we do. Write the chorus, write the bridge, write the middle 8, finish the song. That's still very good practice for a songwriter. And it's a great relief when a song is finished. Whether it's a good song, whether it's a bad song, there's a real buzz when you finish a good song, but there's also weight lifted off your shoulders when you finish writing a bad song. It's almost like all that information in your head about that song can just be filed away, and you've now got an open mind ready for your new idea and your new song. There's an old cliche that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration, and I think this is also true about songwriting. I think it's very important that we don't wait about and procrastinate about writing songs because we don't have that big idea. Just get stuck in, roll your sleeves up, write the song. I very often find myself in the middle of writing a song that I just don't really have faith in. I kind of know that it's not going to be one of my better songs, but I still discipline myself to make sure that I finish the song. Because finishing the song is still good practice. It helps us develop the chops that we need, because one day we'll find ourselves in the middle of writing a song that we're really excited about, and then all those chops that we've developed from finishing the less good songs all come into play, and you can bring that song over the line more effectively. So before we get into our 7 tips for better songwriting, I just really want to stress that practicing songwriting all the time, every day, will help you develop a toolkit of techniques that will make you a more prolific songwriter. Number 7, rhyme. Now, rhyme is a controversial one. I suppose it really depends on what style of music you play. Some styles of music are very much dependent on rhyme. Some styles of music are too cool for school and think rhyme is so passé. Personally, I agree with both. I think you should be very careful with rhyme, but at the same time, don't be afraid of rhyme. Use rhyme. It's part of the language of poetry that is songwriting. Quite often, I use a rhyming dictionary. There'll be a link to the one I use in the description. I find it useful for a number of things. Sometimes I'm stuck on a line and I don't know what to say next. Then I go, well, what's the last word? look up the rhyming dictionary, and then I'll see a word, and then it'll give me an idea for a sentence. So it's one way of just sort of sparking the ideas process. Another thing that's really useful in rhyming dictionaries is that they have a list of near rhymes, because sometimes near rhymes can sound a bit less contrived and a bit less cheesy than actual perfect rhymes. I'll give you an example. Say we have the line, "He was standing at the edge," and I don't know what to write next. So I look up the rhyming dictionary, and there's no satisfactory word that really rhymes with age. Well, there are words that rhyme with age, but there's none that really spark any ideas for me. We go down to the near rhymes, and in near rhymes you see the word page. I suppose in my accent it's slightly more of a rhyme, but age and page, the rhyming dictionary wouldn't necessarily get them because it doesn't end in D-G-E. But nevertheless, straight away as soon as I seen that, I came up with the line, "ripping up the page." So, he was standing at the edge, ripping up the page. I wouldn't have thought of that without the use of the rhyming dictionary. When you're using a rhyming dictionary, sometimes what you'll find is that your first line will sound really cool, and then the second line will sound like it was only put in there just to rhyme. I find it a good tool to switch those lines about, and then that way the rhyme doesn't sound as contrived. And even with the phrase we just wrote, he was standing at the edge, ripping up the page. If we switch that around, ripping up the page, he was standing at the edge, I think that's more dramatic. So always look at the possibility of switching your lines around, jumbling up your whole lyrics and finding, is there a cooler order to put all these words in? So to recap, rhyming is cool, but it's also bad, so use it sparingly, but don't be afraid of it. Tip number 6, write bad lyrics. Now, it may seem like I'm being facetious here, but I think a very good tool for becoming a good lyricist is to just write bad lyrics, and I'll explain why. If we're given music and we want to write lyrics for that music, try and work out what phrases you want to sing, and then write down whatever mumbo-jumbo you come up with. It could be the worst lyrics in the world. Write it all down, have it on a page in front of you, and then go through it and go, right, that line's rubbish. How can I change that line to make it better? Okay, I don't like that word. What other words could we use? Edit, edit, edit. Go through the lyrics in multiple passes until you can't find anything else to edit, and then you'll probably have pretty good lyrics. Pretty decent at least. I'll give you an example. So, the first thing comes into my head is a man goes out for a walk to clear his head. Okay? So, he goes out for a walk to clear his head. That's okay. You could probably use that in a song. It's not terrible. The first thing that I see wrong with it is he went out for a walk. This is descriptive, but in a very boring way. There's a rule in storytelling where people like to say, show, don't tell. And when we say he went out for a walk, it would be better to infer that he was out for a walk rather than he went out for a walk. So we could say something like, as every leaf fell in the park. That sort of infers that he was out for a walk, but it doesn't actually say it. So it's a bit more poetic. It's a bit more artistic in the way that we've said that he's gone out for a walk. And then to clear his head. So with every leaf that fell in the park, it cleared his head. With every leaf that fell in the park, his conviction grew stronger. With every leaf that fell in the park, his confidence grew. So something like that is, in my mind, a bit stronger than the first sentence that we had. And that's what I like to do. Just get something on the page so that you've got something to react to, so that you've got something to edit. And that way you can just improve your skills as an editor, improve your skills in finding better ways to say things. So always scan those lyrics and try and avoid cliches. Take out any cliches wherever possible, or subvert the cliche, or turn it back to front, or knock it on its head. Try to write a bad song every day. I've changed Paul McCartney's quote from "don't be afraid to write a bad song." The way I say it now is try to write a bad song every day, because sometimes you'll fail. As in, if you try to write a bad song and fail, then possibly you've written a good song. Okay, tip number 5, use a thesaurus. Or Thesaurus, or so people pronounce it all different ways. I say Thesaurus. I find it a very, very useful tool as a songwriter because, as I said, I like to just write any old lyrics and then gradually edit them. So when I see a word that I don't like, I can look it up in the Thesaurus and it'll give me a list of alternatives. But more importantly, it gives me ideas about how to say things in different ways. Sometimes you can use this for repetition. We can say a line and then use the thesaurus to say the same line again, but using different words. And I think that's a cool technique that works quite often for me. I'll give you an example of this. Say we have a line like, he stood at the gates of hell. Now, I'm going to look that up in the Thesaurus now. So in the Thesaurus, when we look up hell, we can see inferno, misery, purgatory, Hades. So there's a lot of words here. We'll use two words for hell. We'll use Hades and inferno. Hades, inferno. He stood at the gates of hell, his eyes fixed on Hades, inferno. So we've just really said the same thing twice. He's looking at hell. He's looking at hell. Both those lines mean the same thing. But lyrically, we've fleshed it out a bit more, and that was through the use of the Thesaurus. It's a very useful technique. Another thing I use a Thesaurus for is not necessarily for the meaning of words, but for the sound of them. So if you listen to how the lyrics scan as you're trying to sing them, sometimes you'll find words, maybe you like the word and maybe it's a good word and it's useful in the song. Maybe you would like an extra syllable in that word, or maybe you would like a syllable less than that word. So to make the lyrics scan better, you can change out words so that the syllables fit into the song better. And I find that a Thesaurus is also useful for that. So that's it. Number 5, use a Thesaurus. That brings us to number 4, Poetic Devices. Now this is the point in the video where you're going to wish that you paid more attention in English Lit in high school, because we're going to go over all these again because they're very important for writing lyrics. The first one is metaphor. Now, I really like metaphor as a device in writing lyrics. The common example that people use is an emotional roller coaster. When we see that phrase or hear it, we don't think the person is actually on a roller coaster. We know that what they're doing is comparing the ups and downs of their emotional state to the ups and downs of the roller coaster. So always be on the lookout for clever metaphors to use in your songs. The next one is alliteration, where we use the same starting letter for a few words in our lines. Sometimes this can make your lyrics sound very strong. It can add a certain sonic feeling to the lyrics and make the lyrics really pop. The next one is analogy. It's very like metaphor. It's still a comparison, but it's less poetic than a metaphor. It's very obvious that you're just making a comparison. For example, you might talk about the Darwinian nature of human society. That's comparing human society to the natural order. And those types of things can make your lyrics sound quite intelligent if that's the vibe that you're trying to express in your lyrics. Juxtaposition is also very cool, where we take two things and sit them side by side. For example, you might be talking about something that you hate and something that you love, and going back and forward between them. This can add contrast. If you're trying to write lyrics where there's soft parts of the music and hard parts of the music, you might want to compare something that you love with something that you hate, or something that makes you angry with a solution. Imagery is a good one. I remember when I was young, a song that absolutely fascinated me was Iron Maiden, Flight of Icarus. The reason why I liked it so much is because it's very visual. The visual imagery just jumps off the page when you're reading the lyrics or listening to the song, because they describe the entire scene so well and you feel like you're there. So finding very clever ways of describing how a scene looks or how it felt to be there, that's imagery. Try and be visually orientated in your lyrics because people relate to it very well. Allusion is a very important one. I said before that there's a rule in storytelling, show don't tell. It's sometimes better, rather than specifically stating what it is a person's doing or specifically stating how a person feels or what their motivations are, you can find ways of alluding to it without actually saying it. We'll talk more about that later on, and I'll try and come up with some examples. But quite often, lyrics will come across as having depth and being thoughtful if they allude more to what we're talking about rather than literally saying what it is that you mean. Irony comes up a lot when people are talking about lyrics. Most people, when they hear irony, think of it as sarcasm. Basically, it's saying the opposite of what you actually mean in a way that the listener can understand that what you mean is the opposite of what you're saying. Now, a lot of songwriters are afraid of repetition. But repetition is probably one of the most important tools that we have as musicians. Don't be thinking that lyrics are bad because there's a lot of repetition in them. Sometimes the best songs are the songs that have a lot of repetition. Repeating lines, even repeating whole verses, and most certainly having repetitive refrains within a song, gives the song a certain amount of ear candy that people can relate to and remember. So don't be afraid of repetition. All these poetic devices, they're all very important to understand, and it's very important for you to get experience in using these devices and become good at it. But it's also very important for you to be careful not to overuse them. As a lyricist, I'm sometimes in awe of songwriters who can write very, very simple songs that don't have any of this at all. They have a voice and they sing with that voice. They understand who their audience are and who the character that they're trying to portray themselves at within the song has a certain vocabulary, and the song works within that vocabulary, and that's really cool. I think it's important to always understand what's appropriate within the style of music that you're trying to write. Are big metaphors and juxtapositions and similes appropriate, or is a complete lack of them the appropriate thing for your lyrics? It all depends on what you're trying to say. Number 3 is style. Now, I don't mean this in the controversial way that you should actually rip off other songwriters. Of course not. If you think about the guitar player in your band and think about how much he owes to James Hetfield and Eddie Van Halen, and understand that there's a sort of family tree of influences that continues down through guitar players, do the same yourself with lyrics. Find lyricists in bands that you really appreciate. Say, for example, you're into a band like Tool. Analyze their lyrics, find out what kinds of things they write about, take notes about how much metaphor and illusion and stuff like that is in their songs, how much rhyme is in their songs, and try and learn from the way they approach their songwriting. It's very important to have a work ethic. I try to write a song every day. I usually fail every day, but I try to write a song every day. And I think that getting up in the morning and saying, today I will write a song, is a very important first step to becoming a songwriter. So sometimes when I have no ideas for songs and no inspiration at all, I'll just take a song that I really like. For example, one time I took the song Spirit of the Radio by Rush and I copied out all the lyrics and I changed each word, one word at a time, until not a single word of the original song was left, and I had a new set of lyrics, very much plagiarized on Spirit of the Radio, but almost unrecognizable. So it's an interesting trick if you're really stuck, and it does work. Some of my friends are surprised at me at how much I appreciate pop music, and I think you should draw inspiration as a songwriter from pop music. And the reason why I think this is because quite often I hear songs on the radio, and as a songwriter, I can't help but be impressed by how good the songwriting is. And there's a reason for this. Some of the greatest songwriters in the world have found themselves working in the pop industry. I'm thinking about people like Max Martin, who is from a heavy metal background, but he writes a lot of songs, a lot of very successful songs. He is a very accomplished lyricist and a very accomplished songwriter. So if you want to hear songwriting at its very peak, keep an eye out for songs that are written by these types of songwriters. So number 3 is style, but be clever about it and don't rip people off. Number 2 is keep notes. Have some way of keeping notes. Have the record app on your mobile phone at hand, or a notepad app on your phone, or a notepad in your pocket. Always make sure that any time of the day or night, if a lyrical idea strikes, then you can note it down or record it or whatever's convenient for you. I call this having your lyrics radar on, and your lyrics radar should be on all the time. You should make it a daily habit to always keep an eye out. If you hear a clever metaphor, if someone says a piece of wisdom that you think's really cool, or a turn of phrase, get it written down. Because sometimes then when you're writing lyrics and you're stuck, you can refer back and go, oh, that line would work in here. I think as much as anything, writing lyrics is a habit. It's a habit that you have to form. You have to just get into the habit of being a songwriter all the time, 24/7. Always have the songwriter part of your brain on the lookout all the time, mulling over ideas, trying to work out what's a cool way to say something that you feel. So number 2, keep notes, because songwriting is a habit. And finally, number 1 is show, don't tell. This is about trying to find ways to describe a certain point of view or describe a certain emotion without actually just stating it literally. So find new approaches, find ways of saying stuff from a different angle, find new perspectives on old ideas. Lyrics can sometimes be as much about what you don't say as what you do say. Make lists of words and subject matters that you don't actually ever want to sing about. And then when you find yourself verging into that territory, the red flag should be up and you should be trying to find ways to avoid it so that your lyrics are less cliched. I sometimes liken it to the game Taboo. Taboo is a game where you have to speak for 1 minute without pause or hesitation on a certain subject. Say, for example, on the subject of elephants. Now we talk for 1 minute, but we're not allowed to say the word elephant. And we can apply that to lyrics. Say, for example, we try to write a song about love, but we're not allowed to say the word love. or write a song about war, and you're not allowed to say the word war, you're not allowed to say the word battle, or any other simile that's associated with wars or battles. So what you'll end up with is a song that you've intentionally written about war, but it's a bit cryptic what the song's about because you've left that stuff out, and that can make the meaning of the lyrics a bit more universal, and people can read into it what they want. So when you find yourself verging on using these taboo words, then change things about. Get out the Thesaurus, get out the rhyming dictionary, find ways of doing it in a different way, and just in general try and make your lyrics less literal and a bit more cryptic in their approach. Right, so that's a general high-level view of my approach to lyrics. If you've got any ideas yourself, please let me know in the comments, because I want to start a conversation about this. For a lot of songwriters and musicians that I know, lyrics is the most difficult thing. So the more we can try and flesh out some of these ideas, the more we can help each other and all become better, more prolific songwriters. If you found this video interesting, please let me know, because I think it might make an interesting series and we can delve even deeper into some of the subjects that I've talked about, and any new ideas that you might have, let me know in the comments. And please don't forget, like and subscribe. Thank you so much guys for watching. You guys rock.